Hello, I'm Peter Wilkinson. I'm director of a small but perfectly formed fire engineering consultancy called Pyrology. No, that's not working either, is it? Sorry? Let me think this through. Right, let's imagine that we just met at the bar. And, right, pleased to meet you. I'm Peter Wilkinson. I'm a chartered fire engineer. Brilliant. That's it. That is a job description in 3 words. It tells you I'm an engineer. You know where this is going, don't you? It tells you I work in the fire sector. And it tells you that I'm particularly good. Okay, I've slightly exaggerated that last bit, but what it does tell you is that my expertise and hard work has been recognised and is genuine. And really, that is the key to what I'm going to talk about today. That introduces the theme. I'm going to discuss what it is to be a professional engineer, what it means and why it's worthwhile. Most of my talk is going to talk about what the role the IFE plays in registering professional engineers. I'll touch on how long we've been doing it and a bit about the past and what our future direction is going to be. So, spot the deliberate mistake. I thought I changed that earlier. Let's start off by thinking about what is professional engineering. Well, first of all, you need to know a bit about the organisations that are at the heart of the engineering profession. We've got the Royal Academy of Engineering, and they're to really advance and promote excellence in engineering. They provide analysis and support to policy. Engineering UK is there to promote engineering as a career, generally to school pupils. But as you can see here, it's down the bottom there. It's the Engineering Council, along with those professional engineering institutions that are concerned with practising engineering members and their regulation. So it's the PEI, the Professional Engineering Institution, who registers the individual, a process that I'll touch on in a bit. And it's the Engineering Council who review what that PEI does, maintaining standards, and they are necessarily high. Here are the logos of the 36 professional engineering institutions licensed to award professional registration to their members. Right. Does that slide stay? Right. Some of the institutions have limitations on who they can register. For example, the BCS don't have a licence to award EngTech. And several of these institutions have registration agreements with professional affiliates. And these are those professional affiliates. And these are engineering institutions that are closely associated with, but not licensed by, the Engineering Council. They're an influential group. Happened again, hasn't it? Sorry. Affiliation is recognition of the contribution these organisations play in their particular field. And it's also a way that it gives them the opportunity to test their procedures for membership, and that might lead to them one day becoming a PEI. And that's exactly how the IFE got into the business. We started by affiliating with the Energy Institute. Back then it was called nominated body status. Okay. What is a professional? Well, clearly, a professional knows the limitations of doing research through Wikipedia, but by copying and pasting some paragraphs from that particular site, I've found some statements that I think are actually quite good. Let's take a look at these statements. I've picked out some words, particularly specialist educational training, people who undertake intellectually challenging work, impressive competence. I like the ones down the bottom though. Trust, ethical and moral regulations. I'd agree with these statements. This is what it's about when you're a professional. And what's professional registration? Well, really it's that top one, isn't it? It's recognition of that competence. Recognition through membership that your competency has been assessed and you've attained that standard and you can tell the world about it. That's what I think professional registration is clearly about. So, how are these competencies assessed? Well, the UK Standard for Professional Engineering Competence, bit of a tongue twister, but we'll refer to it from now on as UK Spec, that describes the value of being registered. And it's a document that's published by the Engineering Council. It describes the requirements that have to be met and gives examples of how to do it. UK Spec should enable individuals and employers to find out whether they or their staff can meet the requirements, and it explains the steps necessary to achieve registration. Now, our registrants within the IFE carry out many responsibilities, including the need to observe a professional code of conduct. I hope you've all read it. They're all described in this document, together with advice to how to maintain registration. This standard that's developed by the Engineering Council is regularly updated by panels representing the professional institutions, employers and other people. And it's structured into these 5 objectives listed here. So, engineering knowledge, theoretical and practical methods, responsibility, communication and commitment to engineering. We'll look at these in a bit more detail in a moment. But what are the titles of registration? Well, here are the 3 that the IFE are licensed to register. It's Engineering Technician, Incorporated Engineer, and Chartered Engineer. And these are the key attributes of each title, suggested by the Engineering Council. So engineering technicians, they're concerned with applying proven techniques, they carry out supervisory or technically responsible work, they contribute to design, development, and commissioning, operation, maintenance of product, equipment, processes or services. Incorporated engineers maintain and manage applications of developing technology. And they also undertake engineering design, develop, manufacture, and variously engaged in technical and commercial management and possess effective interpersonal skills. Chartered engineers are characterised by the ability to develop appropriate solutions through engineering problems, using new or existing technologies. They're often engaged in technical and commercial leadership. So we mentioned those 5 competency areas, A to E. If we take them in turn, this is what each of the various titles of registration are supposed to be able to demonstrate. So with A, engineering knowledge, for Eng Tech, you're supposed to be able to demonstrate you can apply technical and practical skills. I-Eng is application of technology, and C-Eng is optimisation of that technology. We can go through the others as well. It takes a similar role with theoretical and practical methods. Eng Tech are undertaking those activities. I-Eng is applying methods to solve problems, and C-Eng is really about analysis and solution to those problems. Responsibility, very similar. Communication skills, similar again. Let's flick through these quite quickly. But finally, competency E. Every registered engineer, irrespective of title, is expected to be able to demonstrate these. So it's to undertake continuing professional development, keep up to date by reading journals and periodicals, attend training courses, and be an active member of your institution. So, why should I bother doing that? Well, from an individual point of view, some of the benefits are listed here, and I think they're pretty self-explanatory. Like I said before, it's all about that recognition of your expertise and hard work. It carries international weight as well, and it's all about the status of the job you're doing. It can give you greater influence within your place of work. And of course, you do get letters after your name. Registrants are also able to use one of these applicable logos. And once you're registered, you can access that from the Engineering Council website, download it and use it on business cards, stationery and other documents. There are benefits to employers too. Having registered engineers in your workforce gives you that credibility with your customers. It gives the employer assurance that their employees are good at what they do, and they're committed to what they do. I'll not labour the point, because there's quite a few of these benefits, but importantly, I'll just pick out perhaps the third one down there, mitigation of potential liabilities. Having registered engineers on your workforce can really help with driving down the costs of your professional indemnity insurance. And also that last one there, it's pretty important in terms of your quality management systems and being able to demonstrate continual improvement cycles. So just some things to think about. I'm going to move on now and talk about the IFE. And this is the piece of paper that we are proud to have. It's our licence from the Engineering Council, and it says in very small letters in the middle there that we have the licence to assess candidates for registration as CEng, IEng and Eng Tech titles. Within the institution, the registration process is administered and managed by the IFE Registrants Group. So that's IFERG, that acronym that you heard earlier. IFERG is represented at board level, with Martin Chipp being our director. He holds the IFERG portfolio. Applications are reviewed by a group of dedicated volunteers, and it's overseen by the membership committee. Now, we in the membership committee meet every 2 months to progress applications. We meet at headquarters here in Stratford, but via the means of somewhat shaky internet connection, our committee also includes representatives from Hong Kong and Australia. And also the specifics concerning individual route applications and Eng Tech applications are discussed in a panel and a working group as shown there. You don't want to know the nitty-gritty really though. Right, we've been doing this for a few years now. But we can trace IFERG's roots back to, I think David B. Smith is in the room, isn't he? He'll correct me if I go wrong. But we can trace our roots back to 1985, when the IFE entered discussions with the then UK chapter of the Society of Fire Protection Engineers. Now, in subsequent years, the SFP UK chapter would join an organisation called the Society of Fire Engineers to form the Institute of Fire Safety. 9 years later, a memorandum of understanding was signed with the Institute of Fire Safety, concluding a series of meetings that resulted in closer collaboration. And it was at this time that IFE started its discussions with the Engineering Council. In '95, liaison with the Institute of Fire Safety continued, and the forerunner of IFERG, the IFE Engineering Council Division, was formed. Swiftly after that, the IFE made its submission to the Engineering Council for conditional nominated body status, and work began with the Institute of Energy and the Institute of Mining Engineers in an arrangement that's known these days as professional affiliate status. So that's a bilateral arrangement designed to establish the IFE's experience of the registration process. Now, it didn't take long, because in 1998 the IFE completed the development process and became a professional institution, quickly followed by receiving our first licence in 1999. Since then, the Engineering Council Division, as it was known then, held weekend conferences, and one significant conference resulted in a major contribution to the British Standard 7974, which is the code of practice for the application of fire safety engineering principles in the design of buildings. That was first published in 2001. I'm pleased to say that we're still an influential member of that committee that maintains and develops that suite of documents. Now, the Engineering Council division was disbanded as it gave the impression there was a literal division between the registered members and other members of the institution. This just purely isn't the case. We're one institution, and this is properly reflected in the current arrangements, where there's no separate board, just representation at the main board level, and due to the necessity of the registration process, we have a membership committee to administer that. Now, our licence is one with a 5-year review period, so we're coming towards the end of our 3rd period. Since we've had our licence, we've been working hard to promote registration with many different interested groups, including international consultancies, universities, fire and rescue services. We've developed a range of case studies to show how engineers from a wide variety of backgrounds can benefit from registration. And Lisa and her team are constantly thinking of new ways to market what we do to a wide an audience as possible. So in September this year, we'll be going through the licence review process again, so that hopefully we'll receive our renewed licence and take us into the future. I'll touch on our ambitions just at the end, but before I do, I just want to quickly mention that registration process. There might be some people in the audience so we can get signed up. This is a summary diagram from the Engineering Council, and essentially we have candidates who have an educational base plus professional experience, and we can assess their competence. Or we have candidates who have work-based experiential learning, which we assess, and then we assess their competence. But in all cases, registration is dependent on demonstrating competence and commitment at a professional review. So, for the education-based route, I've stolen this slide direct from the Engineering Council. It shows very simply the process there of initial professional development, a professional review, with an interview if you're going for incorporated or chartered engineer status. And typically, although the Engineering Council doesn't really specify how long it takes for an engineer to gain the necessary experience, as a rough guide, for C-Eng, we would say that the education programme's got to be about 4 years long. The initial professional development is probably going to be another 4 years, and a professional review is probably going to take a further year. So from start to finish, that's a significant period of time. IEng, a typical education programme of 3 years with an initial professional development of 2 years and a professional review of 1. Eng Tech probably a bit quicker. But don't panic. If the applicant's academic qualifications are not accredited or approved, then, or they don't have a formal engineering education, there are options. They'll still have to demonstrate that they've gained the required underpinning knowledge and understanding, but this can be demonstrated in other ways. So what we do at IFE is carry out an assessment, taking into account any relevant academic qualifications and work-based or experiential learning. And it's interesting that a significant number of our applicants fall into this category. So when we've looked at all the paperwork and all the certificates and thought about it, we may conclude that the qualifications that they are presenting can be deemed equivalent to accredited or approved qualifications, and then they can proceed as a standard route. Otherwise, we may advise that the applicant takes further academic qualifications, undertakes a programme of work-based learning, or prepares a technical report. So, that assessment of competence by professional review that we were talking about earlier. A professional review report is required by applicants, and here are some quick tips if you happen to be considering yours at the moment. We like to see quality rather than quantity. Good guidance is on the IFE website, or it is also available from the staff at the head office. Please do give them a call. A common error that we find is that it must be all about you and what you have done personally. Don't talk about we and what the team's done. This is a chance to show off and talk about what you as the individual has done. It's always helpful if there's cross-referencing to that UK spec competency. It makes it clear. It makes it easier for the reviewers. But you've got to be mindful that the report is going to be reviewed by 3 peers, and then those actions are going to be recommended to the membership committee. Normally a democratic view is taken, so if 2 out of 3 reviewers approve, then the application will proceed to interview. But if there's a split decision, then this is fully debated at the committee, and we do have some interesting debates sometimes, quite lengthy ones as well sometimes. And then there's the joys of the interview. I quite enjoy doing interviews. It's a really good opportunity to have some intelligent chats and conversations with people, and like I say, I do enjoy them. Whenever we're conducting professional review interviews, we have to be making notes and jotting down key words, they're called. That's just for auditing purposes, and those key words and score sheets are discussed at the membership committee meeting. Right, enough of that boring stuff. So, where are we today? Well, as was mentioned earlier this morning, and as you can see by that tantalising figure down the bottom right-hand corner, we are frustratingly close to having 500 registrants, and that will be a fantastic milestone when we get there. But you can see that our marketing efforts have been relatively successful over recent years. There's been a good increase, and we're hoping this year is going to be it. We get to 500. And another slide that I've stolen from someone else's presentation, who might be here today. You can see that we truly are an international bunch. This just shows chartered engineers, but I think it shows our global reach and influence quite well. So, just looking at the clock. As we start to renew our licence for another 5-year term, it's a good point to think about what we want to achieve in the next few years. Like I mentioned, the short-term goal is hit that 500. But what's also important is to retain the registrants that we've got. And I think we've got a good retention figures. We're going to maintain our good engagement and hopefully increase wherever we can, engagement with industry and engagement with universities. We want to get people hooked in as early as we can, especially students who are studying accredited degrees and non-accredited degrees. We want to get them hooked in early, get that interim registration. We're going to address the gender gap. I mean, our figures are actually pretty good in comparison with other engineering institutions, but we're going to build on that. We're going to try and get all our existing registrants to actively encourage their colleagues if they're not registered themselves. So, bring a friend kind of scheme. But in order to process all these applications, we need to grow our volunteer base of reviewers and interviewers. So we'll be taking names and addresses as you leave today, if you don't mind. Once we've reached 500, we're not stopping there. Our longer-term goal is to get to 1,000 registrants. If we can get to 1,000 registrants, then we leap up into the next category of engineering councils, professional engineering institutions. We've become category 2, and that means we'll get greater influence at the engineering council level. We'll, be pushing for a place on their board one day. So that's what the future holds. So what have I covered today? Well, I've talked about what a registered engineer is, what the Engineering Council do, why bother, and what we do at the IFE. But I'm duty-bound to give this advertorial message to add to the subliminal message I've been giving today. If anyone's interested in registration, if you like what you see, the message is talk to us at the stand outside. It is a daunting process, we understand that, but there's lots of help and guidance available. We have dedicated members of staff. There's Catherine's email address. And I thank you for listening today. I'm Peter Wilkinson and I'm a chartered fire engineer.